All right, welcome back to the Northridge Sports Podcast. This is your host, Mike Robinson. Today it's just me. I don't have my guys with me today, but I do have a lot of stuff that I want to try to get off my mind or whatever. Over the days and at this point now it's beginning to be weeks that I've made another podcast. I'm always thinking about different topics and stuff that I want to like discuss, whether it's like current news in the NBA or just my own kind of like questions that I have for myself or whatever. So a lot of times I'll take notes and sort of like basically keep a little list of things that I want to discuss on the pod, whether it's just me by myself or it's with some of my co-hosts. But as time goes on, if I don't get some of those things out, they just sort of stockpile, in my little list on my phone or whatever. So I want to get some of those things out today. This might be a short episode, a short pod, but I want to get some of those things out right away and then just kind of move forth because we're getting closer to the end of the season of the NBA. We're already past All-Star break, and I think I want to say like 10 to 15 games. No, maybe not 10, but like 15-ish games away from the playoffs. So I probably have to look at the standings to be sure exactly on the number. But I think it's less than 20 games, but it's for sure more than 10 games away, I believe. So between 10 and 20 games as of recording this video. So we don't have a lot of time before we're going to have to do a lot of playoff coverage. And I want to give some predictions going into the playoffs. I already gave an early prediction of, if the playoffs started, a while ago, how I think it would play out based on the history of the players and as well as what's currently going on in the NBA. How are teams currently playing? And at the start of the season, you had certain teams, kind of shoot up in the standings a little higher than they've been in previous years. And you had some other teams sitting kind of lower than they have previous years. And I kind of predicted that certain teams would climb up and make a little playoff push, and that certain teams would probably fall down a little bit, but a lot of stuff would stay the same. And so at the trade deadline, there were some major trades that went down. I mean, obviously, we all know the big, probably blockbuster trade between Luka and Anthony Davis. That was a huge one. But there was also a few other, like, pretty significant trades. In my opinion, Sacramento Kings. Sacramento Kings, in my opinion, made a big change because they got rid of their essential star and franchise player with De'Aaron Fox. And I know Sabonis is still there. Sabonis is a major piece to that team. But he seemed like a solid number 2 guy. Kind of do it all from like the big man position or whatever. But now they got they already had DeRozan. Maybe him and De'Aaron Fox wasn't the best fit. But they got Zach LaVine, and Zach LaVine's used to playing with DeRozan, so there's not a whole lot of like chemistry they gotta like figure out and learn brand new. And so that's kind of an interesting situation. But probably the biggest one to me personally that I think is a big difference and big change is Jimmy Butler moving to the Warriors. Now, Jimmy Butler to me is a major player. I was really surprised that there was a lot of tension and friction between Jimmy Butler and the front office with the Miami Heat. And for whatever reason, they just weren't getting along, and they wanted to part ways. Not surprised, on the other hand, how much they were sad to see him go, because Jimmy Butler is a great player. I think he might even be considered like a little underrated. I mean, I do think a lot of people respect Jimmy Butler's game, but a lot of people don't feel like he's like the man. And I feel like his record throughout his career has proven that he is a winner. And when it's game time on the line, he plays harder than anybody in big games, big moments. He's not afraid of the moment. He really plays his heart out, and that's what you need. Cause like, cool, like you can be a practice all-star. You know what I mean? You could be a preseason GOAT. You know what I mean? And you could be a regular season MVP. But it means nothing if you can't get it done in the playoffs and push your way to the finals. Now, of course, Jimmy Butler hasn't won a ring, but man, I think he is like one good teammate away from like getting him to a championship and winning. So now he's with the Golden State Warriors, a franchise that's familiar with winning. You know, they have good coaching, good players alongside of them. I think that team's still probably missing a player that would kind of put them over the top of any other team. But I think they have a competitive chance. And you've noticed they were already making a little bit of a late season push in the standings, but Jimmy Butler came to the team, and I think he's made a difference. And along with some other teams kind of dropping down in the West, Warriors have climbed up. So I have to give like an updated playoff prediction of where I think things will go once the playoffs actually start. Since we're getting really near time, we're able to see like who's injured, who's not going into the playoffs. And now that there's been trades, what's the landscape looking like? So I'll be talking about that sometime soon, but in another video. But for now, I do want to recap a little bit of my thoughts on the All-Star game. Now, it's been a little while now since the All-Star game has passed. Probably should have recapped this a bit sooner, but I want to talk a little bit about it now. First, I think probably like the biggest news is there was a big format change, and there was a lot of talk around was this successful, and is this good for the business of the league, for the NBA, and for the All-Star game? Are these format changes going to be good going forward, or what else do they need to do to kind of like spice things up and make All-Star weekend like worth watching? And yeah, I got a lot of thoughts on that. First of all, if you watched my video where I said the way I think All-Star game should be, for starters, the number one thing I said, I think there needs to be more All-Star selections, because there's always players left out. There needs to be more players selected. Years past, there were not as many teams at one point in the NBA. The NBA went through an expansion period where they added more teams, but they didn't add more All-Star selections. And then as the game has evolved, there's more good players. At one point in time, there were only, half a dozen or so players that were good spread out throughout the league. Now, there's some teams that have like, 3-4 star level players on one team. And if that team does extremely well, there's a potential that multiple All-Star selections could be selected from just one team alone. You might have 2, 3 at one point in time. I think the Golden State Warriors had 4 guys all in the All-Star game. So that's all from one team. So obviously the fan base from that franchise, they're all tuned in. They want to watch basically their whole starting 5 be in the All-Star game. Whereas there's other franchises and other fan bases just completely left out. So in order to get more fans tuned into the game, there should be more All-Star selections that are included in the All-Star game. And yes, in the course of the game, the starters are clearly going to have the most minutes. The second string players off the bench, probably they're going to play, but probably a bit less minutes. And then the third string players may not play at all, but I still think that for the history of the league, I think it's important for guys and their legacy to get All-Star selections to add to their resume and at least be available to potentially get in the game, whether One team's maybe down a bit, and they want to try to make a push to come back, and they feel like a third string guy can give them that extra boost to push them back, and make a comeback to kind of win the game. Or the other team, vice versa, they're blowing them out. They can let some of those third string players just get some minutes in the game, so they get a little experience just being on the court for the All-Star game, and adding that experience to their legacy and their resume. But the big thing is, besides adding more All-Star selections, again, that potentially, if you up it to 15 for each team, you could potentially get a player from every single team in each conference. I mean, if you take the number one guy, the star player on each team, and put him into the All-Star game, you get the potential to have fans from every single fan base in the entire NBA tuning in to watch their guy, since they made it into the All-Star. Again, if they're a third string player, maybe they don't get many minutes or play at all, but at least they were represented, and people would probably tune in just to see if they do get in the game. And that doesn't mean that that's necessarily the way to pick them, that you will pick a player from each team. In some cases, if there's two guys from one team that deserve it, definitely reward individual accolades, as well as the conference standing, to kind of like weigh that into who you pick or whatever. But if there's a huge fan favorite like a LaMelo Ball that just so happens to have just a bad team record, dude, LaMelo Ball personally is playing out of his mind good. So his individual stats are great. He might be losing games, but he's putting up good numbers, and he's playing in a fan favorite style, very flashy, doing a lot of really interesting moves or whatever. In this modern NBA, I mean, he's an extremely popular person to watch. Win or lose, he's going to be exciting to see. So he's a guy that deserved to be it, and then be in the All-Star. And then Trae Young almost got snubbed, but fortunately for him, Giannis was a little injured going into All-Star weekend, so he sat out, which gave Trae Young a spot. And then same thing with Kyrie. Anthony Davis was injured, so Kyrie got in. Kyrie almost got snubbed. And so, Kyrie definitely deserved to be in it. And again, two really fan favorite players. Both have exciting play styles and stuff like that, and deserve to be in the game. But the other thing is, I personally said we should go back to an East versus West, because it gives the players something to play for. You're playing for your conference. You're playing for the respect of which conference is better. Is it the East in their collection of talent, or is it the West in their collection of talent? And putting an East versus West format, I think, makes it a little better. Now, what happened in the All-Star game is they did like a little tournament format where Shaq and Charles Barkley, Kenny the Jet Smith, they were able to select the players they wanted for their teams, and it looked like they kind of selected it in a certain fashion purposely. Like Shaq picked mainly OG players. They even named the team Shaq's OGs. Charles Barkley, he went with a lot of big men, but also they just so happened to be a lot of international players. So I think they called it Chuck's like international team or something like that. And Kenny went with a lot of younger players. I don't know if he was doing that purposefully, or if it just played out that way. Those are the players he wanted to select. Whatever the case is, that's how the teams ended up being picked and selected by the TNT cast. And then they added in a fourth team, which was the winners of the like Rising Star Challenge game. So a lot of like rookie, second year players, young dudes. They have their own game, the night before the All-Star game, and basically like the winning team from that got to play against Shaq's OGs, which was kind of interesting. I kind of liked seeing that, and I actually thought that did make for some competitive play. And overall, I was excited to watch the games. They were interesting. It was just something new, something different, and I didn't mind the format overall. I don't think that's the way it should be, going forward. But if they do keep this type of a format or tweak it slightly, make a difference, make a change, I'm not so mad about it. I think there's potential for some form of a tournament to be kind of interesting. I don't mind that it's not a timed thing. It's based off of how many points they score. So they're scoring. They're playing till they reach a score total, which I believe was 40 points. So I didn't mind that so much. That actually wasn't too bad to see. But yeah, overall there was a lot of people that complained. A lot of people was like, yeah, I mean they still didn't play as hard as people would have liked. And I think to a certain extent, even if you add certain incentives to incentivize the players, and there are various different ways you can incentivize them, whether it's monetarily or some other sort of benefit or reward to the season for you performing well and winning in the All-Star game. There's different ways to kind of like reward competitive play. But part of me kind of has a feeling that we're just in a new era in time in which that just the culture and this and the I don't know. I want to say the not the competition level of the players, their competitive drive, but specifically in regards to the All-Star game. The All-Star game is just not valued high. It just doesn't hold a lot of value to players, so much as them playing in the playoffs and competing for a championship. That is the ultimate goal, is to win a championship. So a lot of players, when they look at the All-Star game, they kind of feel like, yeah, we're like what is it, like 2/3 to almost 3/4 of the way through the season. It's not too far away from playoff time. A lot of players don't want to risk getting injured. Playing their hardest in an All-Star game and then tweaking their knee, and then now they're out for the playoffs. That's terrible, and I don't blame players for taking that approach. But I think there's also just sort of like a different culture today around competition in general, but definitely when it comes to the All-Star game, where I don't know if there's anything that the league can do to change the mentality of players going into All-Star game, and then competing hard. It might be a difficult thing to accomplish. And yeah, I might visit this topic again, like at a later date. But one slight thing I think could make a difference is potentially if they bump the All-Star game up a little bit. So instead of playing in whenever they, like in February, basically, instead of playing in February, maybe they play in January. I mean, it's only like a month difference, but that might be enough of a difference to where players would be willing to go a little harder for that All-Star game, because they have a longer window of time where if they do get a little knick-knack kind of injury, that they can kind of like heal up and still be ready for come playoff time. So I don't know. And then again, I don't know. There's probably other things that you could explore doing. I would also at least try doing some incentive and see how that works out. Might as well. I know the NBA doesn't exactly want to just throw money at it, because they feel like, why should we pay you guys more to do something you are contractually obligated to do anyway? For the love of the game, for the sake of the fans, and the integrity of the sport, you should be going out and playing your hardest anyway. So why pay you more to do what you're already supposed to do? I think maybe that's the league's approach to it. I think they'd almost rather fine players for not playing hard, but I don't think fining players is the route to go. I think incentivizing them is worthwhile doing, but maybe you can find another solution to reward players for something for winning. But anyway, we're gonna move on. A couple other things I want to talk about is the other contests of All Star Weekend. Starting with the 3-point contest. Man, you know what? Give me a second here. All right, so I just paused the video for a second, but I had to look up who all competed in the 3-point contest. So I did watch it. Mind you, it's been a little while now, so I had to remember exact details. But Tyler Hero was the winner of the 3-point contest, which was pretty cool. And I didn't mind Tyler Hero being in it. I actually thought that he was a good selection for the 3-point contest. But in general, what I'd like to see for the 3-point contest, dunk contest, and a couple other events that I want to include personally is those other events outside of the All-Star game. I personally think that the players competing in it should be the absolute biggest name stars out of a pool of players that are not starters or a second string player in the All-Star game. So anybody that makes it as like a third string player or reserve player for the All-Star game, they were like basically snubs and stuff like that. Guys that were on the cusp of making an All-Star selection, as either one of the starting 5 or the second 5. So the top 10 dudes, East and West, they would not be eligible for any of the extra All-Star game competitions. And for good reason. A lot of times, a lot of stars don't want to compete anyway. They don't want to maybe suffer the embarrassment of losing. But also, like, they have to play in the All-Star game, and they already don't want to push themselves too hard for that when they really want to rest and relax because they have a tough task ahead of them to finish out the rest of the season and play hard and compete for a championship. So a lot of times for them, doing this silly game of like, well, who's the best 3-point shooter, that really doesn't mean anything. I mean, you're talking about guys that are competing for championships and are part of the top teams in their conference and stuff like that. So I think those guys, it's fair to exclude them, but after them, those other competitions need the biggest name stars you could possibly get. So in this recent 3-point contest, you did have besides Tyler Hero, you had Darius Garland, who's a pretty well known player. He's in the top team in the East right now, and Buddy Hield, which I think currently plays for the Warriors. Really good 3-point shooter. Also like a fairly decent name player. But I kind of came up with some ideas of some other players I think that I personally would like to see compete because they are big enough names, but they're not eligible to play in the All-Star game. So the first dude I came up with was Jordan Poole. Jordan Poole for the Wizards. The Wizards, I think right now is like the worst record in the East. So they're just like at the very bottom of the conference. Jordan Poole, not only is he not making an All-Star team no time soon, he's not getting any kind of reward of any kind at all anytime soon. As long as he's at the bottom of his conference, he's not playing the greatest. I think I think Jordan Poole is not going to be in the All-Star game, but he's a pretty good player, and he's kind of like the biggest name right now for that Wizards franchise. So I think why not put him into the 3-point contest, because he's a little bit of a shooter. Let's see if he can shoot, and I think he'll play as hard as he can for something that he could potentially win. So I think he's a good selection. Second pick is Jordan, or not Jordan Poole. Hold on. All right, my regular interruption or whatever. Anyway, But yeah, so yeah, I already said Jordan Poole. So second one I thought of is LaMelo Ball. I mean, so LaMelo Ball is a guy who got snubbed, didn't play in any sort of All Star event. Um, and yeah, I think LaMelo Ball would be a fun one to see. Now, even if these aren't the best shooters in the league, I still would rather see them than some random no name guy that just is a great shooter, but like he really doesn't play much of the game. I want to see the biggest names compete in those contests. And at least guys that can shoot a little bit. Another guy I chose is Tyrese Maxey. So he's another guy that, honestly, not only is his team record doing bad this year, but also he's on a team with Embiid. Embiid's like clearly the dominant number one dude on the team. So if anybody makes an all-star selection from the 76ers, it's going to be Embiid. But not only that, because that team and that franchise believes they can win a championship with Embiid, they're going to try to pair him with another star player. So they got Paul George as well. So he's another dude that, like, he may get in the way of Tyrese Maxey potentially being an all-star selection. So if he never makes an all-star selection, that'd be pretty unfortunate for him. But at least if he can compete in the three-point contest and maybe win that, I think that's a nice consolation prize. At least he actually got to be in All-Star Weekend, represent his city of Philadelphia and that franchise for the 76ers. That organization's fan base can then root for him in the All-Star game, and that gives him something in this All-Star Weekend, set of games and stuff like that. So I think Tyrese Maxey for the three-point contest would be good as well. Another guy I chose was C.J. McCollum. So C.J. McCollum's a little bit of an older player now, but he's a player that has been really really talented in the league for a long time. And if you look at the Pelicans right now, I mean, he's one of the top scorers right now for the Pelicans. That team. Yeah, I mean, their record isn't great right now. I think Zion hasn't consistently been in the lineup the whole season or whatever, but CJ McCollum's pretty much been holding it down, for the Pelicans, and he's doing pretty good. So I think CJ as well in the All-Star game would be interesting, or I should say in the 3-point contest of All-Star weekend. That'd be fun. I think it's always good to get a big man, somebody that either plays like one of the forward positions, small forward, power forward, or center. If there's a pretty good shooting big guy, I think not just having all guards, point guards, shooting guards, or whatever, but having like somebody that's a little bigger represented in the 3-point contest would be fun. And personally, I like Lauri Markkanen. Lauri Markkanen's playing for the Utah Jazz, and he's one of their lead players. To see him compete and see if he can hold his own and shoot out with some of these other guys, I think that'd be fun. And then the last person I had selected that I would like to see in a 3-point contest is Devin Booker. The Suns haven't been doing good this year, and Devin Booker is kind of in a similar situation as Tyrese Maxey, where he's not the number one guy on his team right now because he has Kevin Durant with him. Let's say the Suns next season shot up to like one of the top 3 teams in the West. There's a possibility where both Kevin Durant and Devin Booker make an all-star team, but there's also a possibility where Kevin Durant makes it as an all-star, but Booker doesn't. And Booker would essentially get snubbed. He'd suffer from the fact that he has another star player on his team with him. And so even if he's personally performing well, his team record is good, he may miss out on being an all-star. And so I think, like, again, a consolation prize is, well, compete for a 3-point contest. At least you get to be a part of All-Star Weekend, and the league and fan bases, throughout the country get to see your face in All-Star Weekend, because Devin Booker for sure is a big name and a star player. He should be somewhere featured in All-Star Weekend. If not the All-Star game, why not the 3-point contest? So those are just a list of some examples. Not saying that's who for sure should be in it. Like, again, I'm not mad that Tyler Hero made it. Darius Garland was a good pick too. Even though I think he had an All-Star selection and was able to play. So he's kind of one of those players where, like, I wouldn't put him in it for that reason. Buddy Hield is, again, a great shooter. He's already competed in some 3-point contests, but he's, like, not as big of a name as pretty much any of the guys I listed. You know, so anyway, so that's the 3-point contest. I think that again, featuring bigger name players would make those extra All-Star Weekend games and events more desirable to tune in and watch. You know what I'm saying? If you knew LaMelo Ball and Jordan Poole and Tyrese Maxey, if you knew they were gonna be in the 3-point contest, Devin Booker, Lauri Markkanen, I mean, if you knew those guys were gonna be in it, wouldn't you want to watch? Wouldn't you want to tune in and see? I think so. So that's the 3-point contest. The dunk contest, same thing as the 3-point contest. I think I would exclude anybody in the starting 5 or second 5 players selected for All-Star, for the All-Star game. You could still pick people that are in, like, the bottom 5. Again, because I'm adding 3 more players to each conference, so there's a total of 15. If it's 12, then okay, then those last 2 are the ones that they get to pick from, that could potentially compete in a 3-point contest or a dunk contest. But outside of that, you'd have to pick the biggest names you can in the league that just so happen to not be in the All-Star game. I didn't put this in order of, like, biggest name to least biggest name, because I was kind of filtering through teams of players that I thought could be in it. Because this is the one other thing. In the dunk contest, I think that you do want big names, but you want guys that are, like, for sure good at dunking. Like, guys that you would be excited to be like, oh my gosh, this guy's gonna compete. And the interesting thing about it is there's a lot of guys that their play style, they're not the most athletic, and their play style is not that of, like, a high flying dunker in games, you know, in the league. So that means, like, the selection is kind of hard to pick from, honestly, for guys that you want to include. One guy that I don't actually have on this list, but I think would be somebody interesting to see, is Andrew Wiggins. I think, from what I've been told, Wiggins has, like, crazy athleticism. You don't always see him utilize it in games, doing, like, you know, crazy in-game dunks or whatever. But supposedly he can jump really high and can dunk really well. So if he has, like, crazy good athleticism, I say let's see Wiggins in it. Wiggins has been a pretty quiet, borderline star player for many years in the league. He's had a name and some buzz around him as a player and his game, but he's never been quite that breakout star. Not in Minnesota, and he kind of had his chance, I think, in Golden State, but still just was really overshadowed by other players on his team. So he's another guy that, like, if he has that potential and that talent to be a good dunker, let's see that. He's already a guy that, if I heard that his name was going to be in the dunk contest, I'm interested. I want to tune in and see. I don't want to see some no-name, nobody, rookie dudes that's barely played in the league, or guys that's played in the G League. No offense to Mac McClung. I'm happy for him winning. He's a phenomenal athlete and a good dunker for such a short guy. But I don't want to see another Mac McClung dunk contest. Don't want to see it. I want to see guys that have bigger names, bigger notoriety, a bigger, like, legacy within the NBA than the selection of guys that they chose. So this ain't the greatest list. These guys I just kind of threw together on here. But Miles Bridges is one. Now I know Miles Bridges has some controversy around him as a player. He is back playing on the Hornets. He's a phenomenal athlete, great dunker. I'd be excited to see him. He's not the biggest name, but I'd be excited to see him. Again, he's not in the All-Star game. His team's in the bottom of the conference, but he's somebody that it'd be interesting to see him for All-Star weekend. And if LaMelo Ball is there with him, the two of them can kind of do some little I don't know, fun antics for the dunk contest. LaMelo Ball throw him some kind of crazy pass or something like that, and Miles Bridges dunks or whatever. I think that would be cool. Second dude, I put Paul George. Now, I don't know if Paul George is like the best choice, and I know he's kind of getting to be one of the older players in the league, but I think it'd be interesting to see Paul George compete. There was a time when Paul George was on the Indiana Pacers, he was one of the hottest players in the league, competing, every year in the playoffs versus LeBron James. He was a fun, exciting, and a popular player. He had star, borderline superstar level, notoriety in the NBA. And he's kind of fell off a little bit, in my opinion, but he's still one of the top players in the league. And in my opinion, if dude's never gonna win a championship, maybe never even make it to a finals appearance, wouldn't it be awesome for his legacy to compete in the dunk contest? I think so, and I think he can dunk. I think he has size, athleticism. He has a big name, and there's excitement behind him. If you knew Paul George was gonna enter and compete, I think there'd be a lot of people that'd be interested to see him. Maybe skeptical of whether he'll win or not, but I think excited to watch him just do anything. So Paul George is one of those guys that I would put in there. Again, he's from the he's on the 76ers currently. Their team doesn't have the best record right now, and he's probably not going to get another All-Star selection in the future. Why not see him as part of the All-Star weekend, since he does have a name? Put him in the dunk contest. Number 3, I put Paolo Banchero. Now, so Paolo Banchero is interesting. This year, he didn't make an All-Star game. I foresee him in the future, very near future, maybe next season, being in the All-Star game as a selection for the All-Star game, because he's such a great player. But Paolo Banchero is a guy that, due to the fact that he was out for a little while with injuries, he wasn't able to put up enough games, in my opinion, and make enough of a name for himself this season to be selected for the All-Star. But he's a phenomenally great player. He's a little bit bigger dude. I don't know how exciting his dunks are gonna be, but when this guy takes off, jumps in the air to dunk, you can't tell me that, like, as a fan, you're watching and you're like, oh my, you don't like jump up out of your chair when you see this guy rise up in the air in a game. So with that level of excitement, he's a dude that, like, I would love to see him in the All-Star in the dunk contest. If I knew he was going to compete, even if he doesn't put up the flashiest, craziest dunks, just knowing he's going to be there, his name, the hype behind him, and just to see him, like, take his first dunk and drive to the basket and rise up, like, people are gonna be like, oh my gosh, like, there's that level of excitement. You don't get as excited when it's a player that you're not as excited about. So that's why I would pick somebody that has a little more hype behind their name. The fourth selection on this list of guys that I just was trying to, like, scavenge through teams and pick. This guy probably should have been the first dude I thought of and put on the list, but Zion Williamson. I think we're doing a disservice to the league by not having some of these big name guys compete in a dunk contest. Even if they're not the craziest, most creative dunker, dude, you can't tell me people don't love to see this big guy just rise up and just slam the ball down as hard as he can. He damn near don't even got to do nothing crazy, just a windmill, boom, and just slam it down hard. And I think people would get excited for it. It's Zion Williamson. Like, that's what you want to see. Similar to if If I think at this stage in his career, if LeBron competed in a dunk contest, I would watch it. I would love to see it still. Why not? What he doesn't have anything to lose at this point. He's just like he's nearing retirement. So for him to compete in a dunk contest at this point in his career, I think it can't be a lose situation for LeBron. But I think he's many years too late. I think he should have been in a dunk contest way earlier in his career, if not like rookie season, somewhere in those first few years of him playing. And similar to Zion, he doesn't have to do the most creative dunk. He doesn't have to do anything too flashy, too crazy. He just have to rise up, dunk the ball, and people are gonna be excited to watch because it's LeBron James. I think Zion has that similar effect. Run and like jump from damn near 3-point, or not the 3-point line, the free throw line, and then just slam it in. Like people are gonna go crazy. Like, oh my gosh, like. And those are the type of names you need in that contest. And then the last two I picked on here. Not to spend a long time on this topic, but Shaedon Sharpe. He's a guy that just came to mind because I know he plays for the Trailblazers. Trailblazers does not have anybody represented in the All-Star game, nor will they probably anytime soon. Similar to the Wizards in Jordan Poole, right? Jordan Poole's got a little bit of a name, but he probably ain't gonna make no All-Star game no time soon. So the Wizards, that whole franchise, that whole fan base won't be able to see anybody from their team be in All-Star weekend. So that's a whole fan base they may not watch just because there's nobody from their team to root for. There's a lot of fans like that. They're purely fans of their team, and they really don't care that much about who else is playing. They don't care that much about LeBron James. They don't care that much about Steph Curry or Kevin Durant or some of these newer star players that are coming through, like the Luka Doncic and Jason Tatum and Wemby, and like some people just like they're like, yeah, whatever. Like, I don't care that much about them. I care about my team and my players only. And so the NBA is missing out on a lot of fans by not including some of those teams and franchises in All-Star weekend. And so like Shaedon Sharpe is somebody that's athletic, high flyer, good dunker. He could represent the Trailblazers franchise and that fan base in the dunk contest. So I think he'd be a good pick. Not the biggest name, but somebody that can represent that franchise. And then the last one was Zach LaVine. So Zach LaVine has been like on the cusp of making an All-Star selection. I think at least a couple of years. He's one of those dudes that like he's gonna be this close to being an All-Star damn near his whole career. And so he might end his career with like no All-Star selections. I don't know if he's even made one at this point in his career. But he might not ever be in a part of All-Star weekend outside of his previous dunk contests where he won. And so it's kind of unfortunate, but I think he's a big enough name and a star and an amazing athlete and dunker that he should be a part of the dunk contest. And I put him as my last pick on my list for like people that I want to see in the dunk contest and that would have made this year's dunk contest a better event to watch and have tons of people tune in for. And I'm gonna say one more thing too in a second, but I also chose him because Mac McClung was in back-to-back dunk contests 3 times. Would you rather see Mac McClung again, or would you rather see Zach LaVine again? Again, Mac McClung, I'm rooting for him as a player. I'd love to see him actually play in the league, actually get NBA minutes and play in the NBA. But I don't want to see him again in another dunk contest. I would rather see Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine is a prior winner, and so he's kind of holding up his own legacy of winning dunk contests. That's a guy I'd rather see. And to me, if I'm Zach LaVine and I'm not a part of the All-Star game, throw me in any contest, you skills challenge if you want to. Like, I don't care. Like, I want to be a part of something in All-Star weekend. And since he already has a legacy with the dunk contest, why don't we see Zach LaVine in another dunk contest? And I think there'd be way more excitement and buzz around him. And his highlights from previous dunk contests are gonna just get replayed leading up to the dunk contest and probably in the broadcast for All-Star Weekend. The other thing I want to say that's really, really important: the All-Star Game is the last day of All-Star Weekend. The first 2 days of All-Star Weekend are these other little contests: 3-point contest, dunk contest, skills challenge, rising star challenge. Think about this: if no one's tuning in to those previous days, they're literally watching anything else that you can possibly watch on TV, or they're just going to sleep. If that's what your fans are doing for All-Star Weekend, how many people you think are going to want to tune in for the game if they don't even care about the other stuff as part of the All-Star Weekend? Those events that happen prior to the All-Star Game, the day of the All-Star Game, those are an opportunity for the NBA, for the league as an organization, to draw in more fans to tune in to the All-Star Game. You have to make the 3-point contest and the dunk contest as exciting as possible. Those contests are so important for viewership in the All-Star Game. You have to have the biggest names, players that people want to see, fans will tune in for. You have to draw them in order to kind of funnel them into watching the All-Star Game. Because if they're already excited to see those quick little contests, the 3-point contest, the dunk contest, if they're already tuned in, excited to see that, they'll more than likely want to want to stay and watch the All-Star Game, on All-Star Game Day. So yeah, all those events are vitally important. Vitally important. Next thing I want to talk about, Rising Star Challenge. I think that should still be a thing. Like I think having the rookies and the second-year players and some G Leaguers or something like that. I think that's a cool event to still host. There's nothing wrong with that, because there's always going to be some exciting rookies that come into the league, and you're gonna want to see them. There's possibly some changes they could do, to that format, where it's similar to the All-Star Game. That's kind of divided East versus West, but I think maybe having it a little bit divided where, let's say the two front runners for Rookie of the Year are maybe on opposing teams and have to compete against each other. I think that'd be kind of interesting. There's an argument that the winner between the two, front runners for Rookie of the Year, the winner might end up actually winning Rookie of the Year for showing out in the All-Star Game. Another thing you can do is make sure that you include whoever's the leading candidates for Rookie of the Year, and on the opposing team you have to have the winner of last year's Rookie of the Year and whoever maybe was the runner-up. Those guys compete with each other. I think that'd be kind of interesting, because you have to do a little bit to promote and advertise it, but you're gonna see basically that's what Rising Stars is all about, is to see who's the up and coming league's best rookie against the best second year player that also won Rookie of the Year. Or you can kind of do it where, I don't know if they go beyond second year players, if they take third or fourth year players, guys that are in their rookie contract at least, but they might want to take multiple winners of the Rookie of the Year and put them together on a team, versus the all rookie team or something like that. That'd be kind of interesting. But I'm also curious to see rookies versus G Leaguers, to see can this team of G League veterans beat out a bunch of rookie NBA players. And stuff like that. Anyway, because some guys can make a name for themselves, and there might be a case for them making it out of the G League and into the league. But anyway, um, the one event that I think is kind of a dud in my opinion, and I think I'm willing to say it should just flat out be cut from All Star Weekend, is the Skills Challenge. I think they either need to revamp it in a way that makes sense to make it something worth watching, or they just need to cut it completely. And in place of that, I got two things that these are not original ideas, and honestly, they're very simple. Plenty of people have already suggested it already, but I think the league should make it happen. It's the one change that would make All Star Weekend like so much more exciting to watch. Get rid of Skills Challenge. Put in a King of the Court game. A King of the Court game where it's 1v1. I don't know how you want to structure the format of it. You know, you could make it like the actual King of the Court game where there's like a rotation of people that come in, and they're doing like, I don't know, 3 dribbles or something like that. And you know, when a person scores or misses or whatever, and it'll knock a person out, and then the next person come in. You could do it like that, or you could just do a straight up 1v1 to like, I don't know, 7 points or something like that, and they'll have like a little mini tournament of 1v1. But here's the tricky part. A lot of people want to see the 1v1, but I know what a lot of people want to see. They want to see like the biggest name stars. I'm sorry, but I think it should be guys similar to my selections for 3-point contest and dunk contest. It should be the biggest name players that are not in the All-Star game. I know that would cause us to miss out on some interesting matchups that people would love to see. Like maybe somebody wants to see Giannis versus Jokic in a 1v1. You know, LeBron James versus Jason Tatum in a 1v1. I'm sorry. I mean, they get to compete enough at the highest levels in playoffs, competing for championships. They're already competing against each other in the All-Star game. I'm okay if those guys aren't in 1v1s. But and like I said, they're already trying to conserve themselves for the playoffs and competing for a championship, and they're already trying to take it easy in the All-Star game. Don't want to put nothing extra on them. I just want them to compete in the All-Star game. That's it. If they kind of raise their level of competition, that's all I want to see. It has to be guys that are either in that third string pick of players for All-Star, or guys that are right outside of being an All-Star pick, but they're the biggest name players, the top dudes on their team. Those are the guys I want to see competing in a 1v1 challenge. And as well as, you need like smart, people with basketball experience to tell you who to pick for the 1v1 challenge. I don't think it should just be like whoever volunteers. I think the NBA should select these guys. They should incentivize them some type of way for playing in it and winning. But similar to the 3-point contest, you want to actually pick guys that can actually shoot. In the dunk contest, you want to pick the most athletic dudes that are good dunkers or exciting to see, in-game dunk. Similarly, you have to pick guys that have really good 1v1 skills. And I'm not going to go into a lot of depth into it, but yeah, there's certain players that you could tell their game is more suited for a 5-on-5 competition. And there's some guys that are much better ISO 1v1 players. So pick the league's best ISO players, again, that are not those top stars. A guy you'd probably want to see is like a Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant's got really good ISO game. But again, he's probably going to be an All-Star game. If he's not selected in an All-Star game, then go ahead and put him in the King of the Court 1v1 competition. I think that'd be cool. I started to pick out a list of dudes, but I didn't get too far, so I'm not even gonna say who I think should be in it. But another competition that you can do as well or in place of the 1v1, which is a big three. Now, what's interesting with that is there'd be maybe one player on the bench as a potential rotation player, but for the most part, it would just be three guys, 3-on-3 basketball, half court, you know. And if you notice, I said big three because yeah, it's 3v3 as opposed to the 5-on-5. But I think that the NBA would be doing them a service to bring in the actual Big Three league. I'm not saying take those players from the Big Three, although if you for some reason can't fill it with actual NBA players and you want to take some retired players from the Big Three, because the Big Three, I don't know how many people out there have watched it, but it's kind of a brilliant idea, you know, by Ice Cube, you know, to put on this Big Three competition of a lot of like former stars and players that you know we loved watching for years, and still can play. They're just not in the league anymore, so that is an option. But I want to see actual NBA players, current NBA players, younger guys competing in a 3v3 format, and seeing how exciting that would be. And again, similar to the other ways of picking players, you want to pick players that are outside of the All-Star Game event, so that they're guys that are going to want to go hard and compete and play their best, knowing that this is the only competition that they're going to play in. They're not going to compete in the All-Star Game, so they might as well kind of give their all in the 3v3 format. And I think that'd be competitive. I think people would go hard, much harder in the 3v3 than they would in the All-Star Game in a 5v5 format. So yeah, I want to see it. And yeah, like I said, if they incorporate Ice Cube and stuff like that, that'd be the NBA embracing the Big Three league as opposed to just trying to push it out and compete against it or whatever. Not that it really competes with the NBA anyway, but I don't think the NBA does a lot to embrace the Big Three. Even now that it's proven to be somewhat successful. It's a league that's not going away anytime soon from the looks of it. And so I think the NBA would be wise to just embrace it and bring it as part of All-Star weekend and part of the NBA culture going forward and stuff like that. So anyway, yeah, that's enough of my suggestions on the All-Star game. I've already like talked quite extensively on that so far in this video. I thought that this would be a much shorter conversation, but I can definitely go on a bit about just talking about this subject. So, but those are my suggestions of the way I think All-Star Weekend could be saved going forward. A way to improve All-Star Weekend. So I want to quickly kind of look at my notes and see if I got something else to discuss real quick. There definitely was a couple other things I did want to talk about. Yeah, so the next couple of things, they are like a little bit of a lengthy conversation, but I'm gonna save them for another video, just because the video length for this has already gone a bit longer than I was anticipating. So I'll catch you guys in the next one. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this conversation, and hopefully you'll be excited to hear the next talk. So peace out. See you in the next one.